Hi guys. Okay, so once you guys have your paper mache, it's kind of hard to see how it's kind of bright. But this, I put a little bit more flour in it, and actually a little more water. But see how it's kind of like a slow drip. I told you before that if it's too slow, then it's too thick. But it's probably good to have a drip, okay, and not have it just stuck to your finger. That's a little thick. Okay, so you got your paper mache stuff ready. Remember, it's just flour and water, that's it. We're gonna do it super simple. We're gonna use balloons. One thing that's great about balloons is that they'll just, once you've got a shell that's strong enough, you can open it up and pop the balloon and pull it out. And then you just have your shell. So, some things you're gonna need a balloon. I will show you these balloons. These are those punching balloons. They're actually a toy, but you get these at the dollar store, but they're bigger. So it depends on how big you want your piñata. These are just the 12-inch, super cheap from Walmart or wherever. They probably have them at the dollar store too. I'm gonna use this and see how big this gets. And then you guys know, the first layer we're gonna do with newspaper. Now newspaper is not very strong, so that's why I'm saying the first layer, because you're gonna wanna do more than one layer. And so I start with newspaper. It just works really well. Also, lots of people have it, it's cheap, all that stuff. But one thing that you wanna do with your paper mache is that you wanna do more than one layer, and you want the layers to be different paper, because if you did white paper on white paper, then you have no idea where the first layer is and the second layer is. Does that make sense? So when you're going over the second time, you might think you already did one part because it's white, but you didn't, okay? So having newspaper and then doing white paper after, or colored paper, I don't care what color paper, I don't care what kind of paper you use. It's just gonna help you know what you've already done and what you haven't done. So let's start with this guy. This will come with that little punching thing. You don't really need it. You'll probably want to get rid of it. The only thing that you're going to see on this guy is there will be this extra thing at the top, okay? So you're going to have to figure out how to cover that up, or if you don't care about it, then don't worry about it. I did get some tape. That will often cover up the spots where you need. This one might need duct tape, which I'll go grab because it's just a bigger knob than normal. I'm going to use one of these. I don't want to blow it up with my mouth, but you can blow it up with your mouth. Doesn't matter. Okay. So it's getting close to the size that it would be if I used one of these. Okay? But I want it to be a little bit bigger. You can fit more candy in it. Whoops. Okay, a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's a pretty good size. Kind of big, huh? All right. So you're gonna tie it off. You guys might need help with that. So you might want to do this part with somebody who knows how to tie balloons, because they can be tricky. Now, I'll try this with, it might be fine with this tape, okay, with masking tape. So, because you don't really want this, unless you want this on your piñata, which I think you probably won't, you're gonna pin that down. So you'll just use masking tape and just, see mine's already going to this side anyway, so I'm just gonna pull it that way. And then push it down into it so that it looks like it's mostly flat. Okay, I'm gonna do a few pieces though so it's strong. Okay, so now see how it's not sticking up anymore? Gotta do the same thing on this side. down pretty tight so it stays pretty flat. And you do want to do it a few times because if paper mache, which is wet, gets underneath the tape doesn't stick so much anymore. So I'm actually trying to cover all the parts that are sticking up. You can't really tell, but that's sticking up a little bit. All right. One thing you also might want is a bowl. One thing that's going to happen is while I'm paper macheing this, so like if I put it right here and I paper mache the top, which side is going to be heavier? Okay, the paper that's on top that has water in it and has flour in it is going to get heavy. So if I paper mache from up here, the balloon is going to want to go like this and start falling over, and it's going to fall over while you're working. Okay, but that's fine. Just this part might get heavy. When this part gets heavy, you'll stick it in the bowl. Okay, and that'll make it heavy enough to stay while you're working on this side. All right, you might just have to keep moving it, but a bowl can kind of keep it from rolling around since a bowl is round and it will hold it better than just the table. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're gonna start with paper, newspaper. Again, you guys can use any paper. You can even use actually paper towels. People use paper towels with it. Obviously, the thicker the paper, the stronger it is, but you're gonna do a few layers anyway. You guys can actually break up paper bags, like brown paper bags from the grocery store. You can just kind of do whatever. But just, again, try to do one layer of one color and one layer of another color, okay? So if you're gonna do paper bags from the store, maybe you wanna start with those if you want the last one to be white. It also depends on what you do at the end. If you spray paint it, it probably won't matter too much what color you use. But if you're gonna paint it with like tempera paints or acrylic paints, you might want it to be white underneath so that the color shows through really well or shows on top of it really well, because it won't work as well on like a brown paper, okay? Also, just if your parents have printed things out and they have, you know, mistake papers that were just printed out and they don't need them anymore, anything you can find that is something that is recyclable is probably the best. Then you don't have to buy new stuff for this. The one thing I would say I don't think would work, and I've never tried it, but don't try magazines. Anything that's shiny and slippery, I would not try that. But regular paper, newspaper, brown paper bags, whatever, okay? So if you're doing newspaper, like we usually do at school, remember you're gonna tear it in strips, and you're gonna tear it in strips with anything, any kind of paper. I'm gonna tear off this part right here because it's the fold. But remember, for newspaper, I hold it like this with one hand, and I just tear it and I pull it down with the other hand, okay? So I'm gonna pull it towards me, but I do this and I just pull down. Oops. Okay, so see they're like an inch or so thick, wide. Remember that paper is flat and your ball is round, and so you want to have smaller pieces of this to fit around round. I know it's tricky, but you want to make sure that the bigger the piece of paper, the more wrinkles it'll have when you put it on there, because it's not round. And it wants to try to be round, but it has to wrinkle to do that, okay? So if you guys are working with a smaller balloon, you might make these even smaller. It depends on what size of thing you're working on, and it depends on if you guys decide to add other things to it, or if you decide to make not a round thing, like you guys can go get your cereal boxes or cardboard. You can make whatever shape you want for the base of your piñata, okay? If you do it with cereal boxes or with cardboard, it will be a stronger piñata, so you'll have to hit it harder. And this one, since it's only a balloon, you do have to do more layers, okay? On a cardboard one, you might want to do one layer of paper mache, and then just to hold it all together and then paint it, okay? Anyway, I'll break right now and then show you guys how to actually paper mache.